I'm in Atlanta this week. I'm actually meeting with some other filmmakers because when I tell y'all that we are, doing all we can to support the building of a Black Hollywood, we're really doing it. We're really getting this done. Like, we're really making movies. I haven't pitched a film idea to Ice Cube yet, but who knows? Maybe we'll do a sequel to Friday Part 5, but we'll call it Saturday. How about that? Because it's a new day for Black people, y'all. It's a new day for Black people, and I really think that you are living Black history right now. You are in it. Your grandchildren will ask you about it. They're going to ask you, what was it like sitting in these, these crazy Dr. Boyce, Taki Grant conversations back in the day when, when this $1 trillion industry was just getting started, and you'll be able to tell those stories. So you're building wealth right now, not just financial wealth, but you're building all kinds of human capital, because you'll be able to pass down in an intergenerational, not just intergenerational resources, but intergenerational attitude, intergenerational culture, intergenerational intellect, intergenerational experiences. So it's happening. And I see, Stephen, I see you said you want to invest in the film. Okay, well, Taki, why don't we start there, man? If people want to invest in your projects, because I cannot imagine how much money this film cost you, and I don't know how you financed it. But first of all, I have two questions. That's a double question. One is, like, if someone was to say, like how hard was it to get the money, and where did you come up with it? Like, what was that like? What would you say to that? And then number two, if people out here want to help, like if people are like, you know what, we like this project, we want to fund your next movie, we want to put 50, 100 grand in your pocket to get started so that you can, get it done and do what you want to do. How could people help with that? So that's a two-part question.
Well, first thing I want to say thank you for having me on the platform. Greatly appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to all those who are supportive in the endeavor, those who are part of the team, to Hootie Films, Charles Barker, Rynell Dixon, yourself, Felicia Hart, and all those who were really, really supportive, the executive producer staff. And I'll start there with answering that question. As you know, the executive producer role is basically the finance or come up with the capital for the project. And several of the people we have there are the investors that we mentioned for HAPI, including myself. One of the things that this project made me realize was that I'm not necessarily rich now, but I'm extremely wealthy, because it was essentially done from resource management. And it was managing the resources and managing those things in my, immediate ecology to make this happen. The relationships were a big part of it, formulating relationships with a lot of people throughout the years. And you realize you were just a degree or two removed from someone else. So the people that came into the project and that contributed from the investor side, not only from those people who took their time to give us their knowledge and to use their likeness, is tremendous. And that really is how the project kind of got started. From a financing piece, one of the things we realized very early on was that it was difficult with the crowdfunding, because it's been some time between my previous movie and now. It's about a 10-year gap. Those people who are interested in seeing the other films we've done, they can go to the website, hapifilm.com. They see Newbie and the Tekken. The Tekken was done, it came out around 2008, 2009, really much right around the time Barack Obama was inaugurated. And following that, there was a hiatus for maybe about 10 years. And people don't hear about you, they forget about you. So we tried crowdfunding, we did Indiegogo, GoFundMe, very slow, nothing really happening with that. I realized the main thing is we got to get ourselves in front of the cameras. We got people let them know what we're doing. So we had these pre-screenings. In other words, we took the footage we had, and we was able to develop a movie on a timeline that people loved. And we kept telling them this is not the finished product, but that allowed us to get in front of people, and now the investors came in. Now people said, hey, I want to be a part of this because they saw what we've done. And we took the project over a certain period of time, maybe over 4 years, and we just gradually kept building on it, kept building on the timeline, knowing what the end goal was, and just developed it throughout that process. In terms of future projects, this obviously lays the groundwork for the next piece. It's in the, I won't say it's in the making, but it's in, the ethers in terms of just thinking about it, what it's going to be. And yeah, people can reach out to us, those who are interested in being a part of it. My email address is hapifilm@gmail.com. They can talk to me directly. Once they get me there, we can exchange information, and I'll be more than happy to talk to anyone who's really interested in getting involved in the next project.
Okay, so you said hapifilm.com. What's the email address again?
Hapifilm@gmail.
Hapifilm, H-A-P-I, Hapifilm@gmail.com is where you can go if you want to invest in these projects. I did sign on this project as an executive producer, largely because I liked what I saw. I mean, I liked where it was going. I liked what you were doing, and it was just thorough work. I take work seriously when people are really putting their heart and soul into it, really putting, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours into a project. It's harder to invest in things that are not, where you're not sure if the creator is committed, because you don't invest in something that's flimsy. It's like going into a bad marriage with somebody that, is going to divorce you after 2 weeks. Why waste your time, right? So basically, when I saw, what impressed me was you had some great people in it. I'll name some that I know, and then you can name some that I did not mention. The names that come to mind are Sharif Abdul Malik, who founded We Buy Black, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who has a PhD in economics from MIT, Professor James Small, I saw him in there, and I saw some others that I recognize, but I just can't remember everybody. Can you name some of the other individuals that were in this project?
Well, the first person that comes to my mind is the recent ancestor who just transitioned a few months ago, and that's Dr. Patricia Newton, great friend, great ally, great HAPI supporter, dearly missed, but we know she's still with us. Dr. Lennon Jeffries, who's been an ally and supporter throughout the years, who was in the other previous 2 films. And Fudishi, the same thing with him. Great supporter, great ally, great HAPI, just happy part of the HAPI team, part of the HAPI family. Dr. Wade Nobles, another part of the family who's been here and who's one of the powerhouses in the community. And I was very fortunate to be able to kind of sit at his feet and talk to him throughout that process. Dr. Jacqueline Badalora, who wrote the book on the birth of a white nation, was a really interesting piece of history in terms of just understanding the psychosis that created white people in terms of who and how they feel, white fragility or the so-called white superiority complex that they have. These are things that we wanted to make sure was brought to the forefront. We have some politicians in there as well. Charles Barron, who's one of the New York State Assembly members here in New York State, and tremendous, he brought a lot. He's been an activist since the 60s, and he brings that into his politics, and he brought that into the film. Wow. You mentioned Dr. Julianne Malveaux, yourself, Sar Imhotep's another person, Jabari Ozaze. Got to talk about the contemporaries because they brought fire with them as well. The narrator is one that really pointed out, because the film is a journey through time. We start in ancient Egypt and we bring people forward until today. And really, the film is really 3 films in one, if you really want to analyze it, because it deals with the economics in Egypt. It deals with the economics around the transatlantic slave trade, or the triangle slave trade, however you want to refer to it. And it talks about the economics of the so-called New World. And really forward, if you think about it, because in the ending, the last 45 minutes or so, gets into who we are today and the solutions, which is one of my favorite pieces in terms of things that we can implement and things we should be doing now. There's also a good friend and also another producer on the film, Kenneth Kelly, who's the CEO of First Independence Bank located in Detroit. And he's also the chairman of the Black Bank Association. So it's a very eclectic group of people from all different types of disciplines. And we look at the film, we break it down to the 3 essential components of government, economics, politics, and culture. So you have your economists, you have your bankers, you have people who have PhDs in the economy, you have your historians, the culturalists, you have your politicians. So we wanted to make sure it was all represented in a very harmonious way.
Interesting. Well, everybody, if you have a question that I don't know how many questions we'll be able to get to today, but if you do have a question, put it in the Q&A section so I can see it and hear it okay. So I'm going to ask you this, man. When people ask me what the film's all about, I have my answer, right? I talk about the way you went, all over the world with this project. I mean, you took it back to ancient Egypt, and maybe I was being grandiose, but I kind of had originally interpreted as sort of an explanation of how a lot of our modern day economic systems derived in ancient Egypt. But I almost feel like it's definitely going to be an oversimplification relative to what a director is going to say. So if somebody said, in a nutshell, like what exactly is the film about? Because I saw the one trailer that I was in where we're talking about financial literacy and solutions. But then I saw another trailer that focused a lot on white supremacy, police brutality, and racial oppression. I think you kind of hit on that a second ago, but I'd like to go deeper into that. How did we end up in Egypt and everything else? I mean, I thought that to me is what made the film so unique is the way you did go all over the world and really kind of connect us back to who we are. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So, yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were thorough in the analysis of, human development, not only human development of politics and economics. So we went to the first civilization, went to Egypt to look at how their political structure developed. And through their political structure, the economic structure also developed, simultaneously. And taking that model, we took it forward just through time to see how economics and politics really kind of work hand in hand. I actually learned a lot making this film. I really learned how the government today, how it functions, how the policies, the legislation that is passed, determines economics in this country, and around the world. And I was like, damn, really was a learning lesson for me. I learned a tremendous amount just in that aspect. And Charles Barron, I don't give too much of the film away, but people, when they see it, they'll understand. He really broke it down in terms of saying, hey, I have the power in my district to determine who's going to come here and do X, Y, Z. And these policies that we vote on determines who's making money, who's not making money. He gave the example, if you're the mayor of New York City, you have the control of a $20 billion budget, and you determine the contracts of who they're awarded to. So if you have a toilet paper company and this textbooks and the schools need books, and you're awarded that contract, you're a millionaire. You know what I mean? So it talks just about how these two paralleling disciplines, economics and politics, how they just work hand in hand. And the problem I find with our people, and it's the reason why, going back to your question of making a film, is that we just don't really understand basic economic principles, basic principles of politics and how these two work hand in hand. One of the first questions we asked you during the interview was, how does it work together? And you definitely answered that question. You nailed it in terms of just how economics and politics work hand in hand. But it doesn't just start here. It goes back into time. Think about the politics it took to manage building the pyramids, the management system that it was used, and the economics that was employed in that time to feed the people that were there building the pyramids, how they were able to, develop this civilization through that. The river plays a backdrop in that because the Nile River provided the sustenance for it. The Nile River provided, through its annual flood, provided the resources necessary so they didn't have to worry about food and things like that. Provided the resources necessary that they could trade any surplus to neighboring countries while they were able to build. The Nile also provided the opportunity to do it because when the Nile flooded, the people who were normally farmers were not farming at that time. They would start to build their projects, the pyramids, the temples, so forth and so on. So all came from the backdrop of the Nile. And that's what we call the film HAPI. HAPI is the original name for the Nile River. And it also speaks to just how people move through the Nile, how people understand the ecology. When we think in terms of how Egypt was developed, everything centered on ecology, the language, the culture, the arts, everything was ecology. We look at the hieroglyphics, so how we say Metanetia, it's the study of ecology. The birds, the snakes, the plants, all these different things were employed into the alphabet. And it became a part of their ecology, it became a part of who they were. The animals in their surrounding, everything in the ecology, the sun, everything was a part of the mountains. All these different things were ecology, and that ecology dictated then their economics. So that lesson that was left behind by our ancestors, we wanted to make the backdrop for what HAPI is all about. And we took that and moved it forward through time, and we took it through the journey from one phase of history to the next, coming back full circle to where we are today.
Well, as you're speaking about that, two thoughts came to mind. You were talking about politics and economics, and I think that that's a really important discussion to be had right now in our community in light of the fact that, we once again, help somebody get into the White House and everything else. And there's, I've always been one of those guys that says, well, you should get more than a thank you, right? Because, trillions of dollars are being pushed around. There are people that are making so much money just from their connections to government. And even if you think about these PPP loans that were given out, who was it? I think Elizabeth Warren actually had it right, where she said, she mentioned Donald Trump and said that, she said, basically, you used the pandemic relief to make all your friends rich. And I saw that firsthand. I saw businesses getting bailouts that they did not deserve. I mean, there was no questions asked almost. It was like, okay, as long as you can fill out the paperwork and you have a company, the bigger your company is, the more money we'll loan you. And it doesn't matter if you're struggling. It doesn't matter you know, what you're going to really do with the money if you're going to manage it properly. Just you can't do anything crazy. You know, you can't go to the casino with it. But, you know, if you had a big company with lots of employees, you could literally have been, I knew companies that were making more money during the pandemic than they were making before the pandemic, and they were still eligible to get these loans. Simultaneously, you had a lot of small businesses and black businesses that could not get the money, right? You know, for various reasons. And it just, I think that's just one recent example of all of this, that when you talk about politics, you're talking about money. And it almost seems that the reason that they might divert us to the symbolism, you know, like oh, no, we're just going to tell you that Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff, right? It's not like they divert you to the symbolism to get you to not talk about the money, you know, because the grown-ups are talking about the money, the little kids are talking about the symbolism. That's almost the way I see politics. Is that what you're saying? What are you seeing in the current political environment that we can learn in terms of how to go and get the money that we deserve and position ourselves to strengthen our community economically?
Well, I'm gonna just take you back to the film for this. And one of the things that was the learning lesson in this was just how do we see economics? And for me, fundamentally, I look at economics as people. You know, and economics starts with the relationship between people, and that's actually in the film. And when you think about how economics start with the relationship between people, we need to, as Black people, first learn how to value each other. And people, you kind of alluded to this earlier when you were saying about you get into a marriage and it's going to be for a short phase, like why bother? You know, when you see economics in terms of relationships between people, people generally fall out of favor with each other because they feel like they're being cheated. Not necessarily cheated on, but they feel like they're not getting equal value for their input or exploit in the relationship. And that's just how economics works. And when you think in terms of how that now translates into politics, once we begin to value our relationships just with each other, we now value our relationships to other people that outside of ourselves. And we look at this as a unifying piece. We look at HAPI as something that's, you know, HAPI, the HAPI River talks about unification. This whole thing we did in the film, we want to inspire people to unify and to build a Black economy outside of what they have, because it's you know we cannot be disenfranchised. I don't want to try to preach disenfranchisement. We need to learn the system, but we also need to learn how to come together collectively. One of the discussions that comes up very often is reparations. Now, I'm an advocate for reparations, and I believe that is deserved. However, we know, you know as well as I do, once the money is given, we're going to turn right back around, and we're going to make every white person rich. So we cannot have that without having the knowledge and love of who we are first. If we don't have that, then you know the reparations is just going to make white people rich.
You know, well, everybody who's watching, by the way, if you just came in, I'm speaking with Taki Grant. Taki Grant is the brilliant director that created the latest blockbuster film called HAPI, H-A-P-I, and I'm an executive producer on the film. Now, what we're going to do tonight is, in addition to having a discussion on you know, economics and politics and everything in between on the film, we're also going to, Taki was kind enough to allow us to show 20 minutes, about 22 minutes of the film in a clip, just free of charge. That's it. Now, what we're hoping is that you will be impressed enough with what you see that you will also join Taki for the screening of the film, for the screening of the entire film. You bring your whole family. It's going to be on the 21st of November, correct? At 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yes,
and we have tickets set up for that screening at blackmovienight.net. If you go to blackmovienight.net, which is where you probably got the pass to join us tonight, you can actually get access to the screening. The screening's going to be $25. And we're just asking you to show the same love for this film that you know, so many of us showed for Black Panther and everything else that came out. You know, Wakanda was never real, but this was real. Ancient Egypt was real. You know, we are real. The Black economic revolution is real. So we hope that you'll consider it because it is something. It's an extraordinarily done film in the sense that this brother took years to make this film. I mean, what year did you start working on this particular project?
You know, I give the birth date of the project as May 25th, 2015. Just in terms of actually predates that, but just in terms of when I said, you know what, we're going to do this. A good friend of mine kept trying to get me to come back into the game. Like for a while, like I said, I took the hiatus, and he was like, "Yo, Taki, let's do a film." And I was like, "Nah, I'm good. I was thinking about doing some other things. And one of the things that came out of it was a discussion about economics. And I realized that if we're going to do something, it has to be more than just a film. And I was like, you know what? I can see how this could actually make a real change and a real difference. I don't want to entertain people. That's not what this is about. And we said, let's do it right. And we took our time from that point, developing the treatment, determining who was going to be in it, how it is going to deliver it, where we wanted to go in terms of shooting. Big part of it, like you said, is in Egypt, but we cannot forget the part that a lot of it's in West Africa. A lot of it's in Ghana. A lot of the film centers in Ghana. Actually, we shot the Ghana stuff before we shot the Egypt stuff. We were in Europe, all throughout the United States. We came to Chicago twice for you to see you, West Coast. We were in California several times. Just all throughout the country, even with Sharif, we went down to Atlanta to shoot him, Mississippi, Dr. Raketi Ahmed, just all around the world. So HAPI is global in that sense, not only from the cinematography, but also from the lesson that it gives you, because as it moves across the continent, from East to West Africa, we're not only bringing you to West Africa, we're showing cultural confluence between the two. And that's something I left out that's very important, that it gives you examples of how the people are connected, through language. There's several people in the film that actually shows how Wallah from Senegal is connected to the Meta Nature, how the Yoruba language is connected to this language spoken along the Nile, how these things, and we're giving examples of that, We also give examples of the Aquaba and the Ankh, how these two symbols are related to each other, just showing, again, the confluence of civilization between East and West Africa, and show that they're really actually one people. Then, as we get into West Africa, we get into the systems that were developed there, and the civilizations and the foundation of Western civilization and their economic genesis, which again is a transatlantic slave trade. So a lot of time is spent in Elmina, the slave port, before we come across the Atlantic. So it's really actually a real journey, and it takes you place to place throughout that journey. So it's very different than a lot of other pieces that was done. And we hope people, when they see it, they realize that, like, this is actually like a real, the documentary. So we wanted to really take our time and really put the love and effort into it, because we want to give it back to our people in the way they gave it to us. And we want everyone to feel proud about this film, because this is something I see HAPI as something that we can all take pride in, claim this as your own, don't look at it as this is Taki's or Boyce's or whoever's film. This is, this is your film. HAPI is yours, and, take pride in it.
All right. Well, let me ask you, so how many locations was that? You named a lot. Did you ever count up the total?
I would say, internationally, we spent some time in Belgium, Rome, several places in Egypt, not just one, through our whole country, because we kind of did it very, from the pyramids all the way down to Abu Simbel, which is the whole country, those who know. In Ghana, which is essentially Accra region. In America, like a lot of it was shot in New York. A tremendous amount of it was shot in New York, Chicago, Oakland, Mississippi, Washington, D.C. A lot of time was spent in D.C. Yes, wow. A lot of time in the nation's capital. Had to, because that's the backdrop, So yeah, we were, we moved around Atlanta, as previously said. So those are pretty much Detroit, which is another, we shot a lot in Detroit as well. So yeah, we definitely made our rounds.
Wow, man. Wow. Well, I can't wait to see the preview. So everybody who's watching, if you're watching online also, please take a second, hit the thumbs up button. And also a reminder, if you want to see the full screening, we're going to show a sneak peek right now of about 23 minutes of the film. And so that'll be our Black movie night for tonight and our Black Wealth conversation. But then also the full screening is going to be on the 21st. And you can go to blackmovienight.net, not .com.net, and you can actually get a chance to see the entire film. So because we got to, building this kind of thing costs money. So we're asking you, if you enjoy it, support the brother, be empowered to participate in the creation of these industries, because these industries, they need consumers. They need people that are going to appreciate the things they create. And then what happens is they then make a profit and they can go back and create more, right? So so that I want to explain that ecosystem to you, so you'll understand why buying Black is so important. We buy lots of movie tickets. Let's buy Black movie tickets. We buy lots of education. Let's buy Black education. We buy lots of clothing. Let's buy Black clothing. All right. So put your hashtag B1 in the chat if you are Black first. Most people on this platform are Black first. That's really important. It's a core value we have. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pull this up, and I'm using a different computer today, but hopefully I won't mess it up.
Just real quick before we transition, I just want to just say something about cooperative economics. First thing, before I get into that, the actual running time for the film is 2 hours and 12 minutes long. So that 20 minutes is just 10% of the actual piece. I just want to just put that out there. The film is over 2 hours long, and we're going to show 22 minutes. You're looking at 10% of the entire film. So there's so much more to see from what you're going to see here tonight. The other thing is, cooperative economics is extremely important. And one of the things we realize in doing this is that as Black filmmakers, we put money back into the pockets of Black people, because like these shirts we have, the brother from Nubian Apparel designed this. NubianApparel.com is a tremendous clothing line. And, he and I, we kind of grew up together, but a Black company. The people we use for the flyers, DVD creation, everything that we do is we're putting money back in the hands of Black people. So when people support HAPI, you're supporting the Black economy, because we're going to turn around and we're going to spend money with Black people to create more content, whether it's for marketing purposes, t-shirts, posters, whatever that we're doing, or anything that we can do in terms of just collaborations with influencers online. This is something else that we've used very strategically. We have to get into this because we have to learn how to spend money in our community. The 6 hour notion has to stop, and HAPI wants to be, examples of that.
All right. Well, and there's a lot of education here. I know that a lot of people are excited about the film because they can watch this film and learn more from watching your film, or, than they learned all through school when it comes to who they are, where we're from, things like that. So there's a massive need in the community for people to find themselves. And so I think projects like this do a wonderful job of doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen right now, and we are going to watch this film. So everybody sit back in your seats, bring your kids, let's get comfortable, and let's take a look at this new film. The film is called HAPI. And once again, the full screening, you can get your tickets to the full screening at blackmovienight.net, not .com, that's .net. Is that George Fraser? I think I see George Fraser in there. If that is George Fraser, then you know how much we love George Fraser. We've had this brother on before, and he's a great Black man. He didn't even tell me he was coming, but I'm glad he's here. He's always welcome. He's one of my, he doesn't know, he may not know he's one of my adopted fathers, but now there you go. So anyway, all right, so here we go. Let me open this up for you guys right now. And let me know in the chat if you can hear it okay and everything. I'm gonna turn it up as loud as I can. Hopefully that'll be good enough. I'm using a new computer today, so here we go. I'll give you the film HAPI.
Economics is the lifeblood of humanity. It is most properly called currency because, like an electrical current, money is power. It commands respect, and its chief companion is influence, to the point where some will do anything to get it. The illusion and pursuit of mundane desires may mislead you down a spiraling path of self-destruction. History shows us that wealth is fleeting, elusive, and too much is never enough. The current of economics can be likened to the current of a river. It must flow. As it flows through the society, it sparks creativity and innovation, drives industry, and defines the aspiration of its people. The abundant economic potential of this flow may have some wondering why there is such a disparity between the haves and have-nots, or the rich and the poor. To understand the flow of economics, one must understand the science of ecology and how it's connected to the economy. African people make up the majority of the world's population, and we sit on the vast majority of the world's wealth. Why have we not been able to turn that into political and economic power for ourselves? African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community? But before we examine that, let's look at the three essential components of world civilization.
Economics, politics, and culture are the foundation of what we call systems analysis. And we need to appreciate that systems analysis and its application to human development, world development. We're standing here at the first capital of America, Federal Hall, where the foundations of economics, politics, and culture were put in place for America. Economics is your productive, creative capability. Politics is your management capability. And culture are the deep values.
On January 1st, 1863, the political climate surrounding the enslavement of Africans shifted when President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation Act. What's conveniently left out of that discussion was, and still is, the continued demand for cheap labor. Today, the political climate centers on immigration reform, but what we're not being told is why. There's a deep-rooted connection between immigration, free labor, and America. Ironically, the major part of the goods consumed by Americans are produced overseas by a form of cheap labor or harvested from American farms by migrant workers. The reality is that not much has changed since 1863. Some may say slavery still exists.
When the very first Congress of the United States of America met in 1790 to craft all the laws of this new country, they created the country's immigration and naturalization law. Naturalization law refers to the process by which one must follow when you are not born in a country and you seek to become a citizen. So they determined, these founders of the United States of America, that in order to become a naturalized citizen in this new nation, one must be white. So we can see in that founding law evidence of how successful this invention was. Not only that, but when you require whiteness in order to access citizenship, they built in a direct line between white and American. In fact, we preserve it linguistically today. I'm just an American. Some of you are Asian American, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, for example. Contingent Americans, in other words. Even if my family came last week, I get to just be American.
When we study American history, we see that from its foundation, every fabric of this country has needed foreign labor to complete its development. The discussion about what and who defines us clearly centers on race, ethnicity, and lastly, country of origin. Power can be seen as a table where everyone wants a seat, but there are limited spaces available. Either you have your seat or not. Today, we're seeing what appears to be a resurgence in the struggle for the preservation of identity playing out on the global stage. However, what we are in fact witnessing is fear. Fear in losing seats at that table. The question that must now be asked is, what role does race play in this dynamic?
What you have is a tension between nationalism and globalism. So globalism would suggest that you have few barriers to trade, that things will be able to move relatively freely. That there may be tariffs, but they may be small. So people will be encouraged to trade and to think globally. Nationalism says us first. And that's what we saw with Brexit. Older people especially, but lots of people were saying, all these immigrants coming into the UK, and I don't have a job. Because with the European Union, you have fairly free movement across borders. So if you were a student in Germany and you wanted to go to Oxford, you could apply, you could go, you would not have to get any visas or do anything like that. So your competition, theoretically, for the kid in the UK who also wants to go to Oxford. So you have basically free movement, and many people felt the free movement constricted their choices. Here in the United States, you see the same thing with Mr. Trump having anchored his campaign around immigration, around building a wall, around banning Muslims, and all these crazy things that he came up with, which he now probably will not do. But in any case, what he did do is incited those people who feel left out.
Since the dawn of early humanity, mankind has migrated from place to place in search of a better way. Interestingly enough, even the so-called worthy or self-proclaimed deserving once upon a time themselves too were immigrants. In this, we can clearly see the role economics has played in the development of civilization. To make sense of this, we must go back in time and retrace the steps of the ancients. Our journey to the past will begin with an examination of political and economic development along the Nile or HAPI River. The Africans that migrated to the Nile used the ecological system masterfully to build the world's great first mega economy. The Nile or HAPI River made ancient Egypt an economic giant by way of agriculture.
Once a year, the Nile or HAPI River overflowed its banks. When the flood waters receded, the inundation left behind rich silt in the soil that made the earth rich and from which each season several crops were yielded. The political and economic development of Nile Valley civilization began with the Nile or HAPI River. The Africans that lived along the HAPI River understood the fundamental importance of economics and its complementary component, politics. This system of economics and politics laid the groundwork for the organizational structure responsible for building great monuments like the pyramids. To achieve this monumental feat, the ancient Egyptians relied on two main economic resources. One was its vibrant agriculture, and two, its people, the combination of which made Northeast Africa an economic model. The architectural legacy it left behind is just an example of ancient Egypt's economic and political strength. How were the ancient Egyptians able to translate their agricultural wealth into a system of governing that managed the creation of their structures? What data did they leave behind? Perhaps the keys are in the monuments themselves.
The evidence that we have are the number of the stones for building this pyramid. This pyramid only 2,300,000 blocks. Each one weight 2 tons, 2.5 tons. Building the Great Pyramid only can be a very important evidence that the government in that time, in Dynasty 4, 4,500 years ago, had a very strong economy. Over 9 million stones had been moved in one dynasty. No economy in the world can do that.
If we go back in history, the Nile secured the means of transporting for trade purposes the goods and resources that those communities needed to eat, to dress, for housing, for health. We must clarify here immediately that we're talking of Black Africans.
Economics is a major factor in the development of any culture, any civilization, any nation, any empire, and any institution. The Africans that lived along the HAPI River understood quite well that their governmental system had to have as its foundation economics.
The political and the management of the structure of the pyramid, I think it's more important for us to understand than building the pyramid. Because you can imagine, when Khufu took the throne, became a king, his architect, Hemiono, who built the pyramid, will come with maps to him and told him what kind of management will be. Khufu and Hemiono was 25 years old when they began to think about building this pyramid. The management of how you manage the workmen in one area, and also the supervision for the workmen to have breakfast in the morning, drinking beer and bread, was a national diet for the workmen who built the pyramid. If you close your eyes and go back 5,000 years ago and think about the quarry location, the workmen moving the stones and putting the stones on the top of the pyramid. And you can imagine medical treatment, how they organize to save the workmen if anything happened to them. You can imagine the management in the area of the Rashe, the mouth of the lake. And Ankaf was the supervisor of the whole area. The management of the Rashe is the most important thing that happened to show how the government was so strong to organize building the pyramid. the workforce entering inside. Limestone, granite, basalt, all this type of things was very important to see. The organization of building the pyramid is more important to show than building the pyramid itself.
One of the earliest known civilizations on Earth, Egypt, or Kemet, finds its roots in a very auspicious beginning. Most people are familiar with Egypt being the birthplace of history, the Great Pyramids, and temples, but few are aware of the climatic change that was the genesis of this great culture. Approximately 10,000 years ago, there was an ecological change that caused the monsoon rains in Africa to shift southward, resulting in the northern part of Africa to gradually transform from a tropical rainforest to the desert we see today. This climate change became the catalyst for the vast migration of people towards river valleys, in particular the HAPI or Nile River, where economics, politics, and culture came together seamlessly in a way that was unparalleled in the ancient world.
The concept coming out of the African world at its rudimentary level and at its developmental level was the 3 C's: communal, cooperative, and collective spiritual development. You didn't build the pyramids to worship an individual. You're building pyramids to link the human experience through the pharaoh to the divine experience. In the African tradition, there weren't enslaved persons that built the pyramids. The workers were building pyramids and other sacred buildings because they would inherit a place in the afterlife.
Every household in the north and the south of Egypt participated in building the pyramid by sending workforce and food to help the king. I found the tombs of the pyramid builders that show to the whole world that the builder of the pyramids were Egyptians, and the builder of the pyramids were not slaves. Because if they were slaves, they will never be buried beside the pyramids. The workmen were sent by the households to help the king. In return, they did not pay tax. This is a very important point to understand. The king completely depended on the number of the workmen that came through the support of the households, based on the discovery of the tombs of the pyramid builders, because I found the lower cemetery for the workmen who moved the stones, and they found the upper cemetery that for the artisans, the technicians, and I found the area for sorting salted fish, and the area for making bread, and the area they lived in it. And this is why I do believe that there was 10,000 workmen built the pyramids in Dynasty 4.
Cooperative economics is the cornerstone of Nile Valley culture. The ancient Egyptians understood that in order to be successful, they must work together collectively and amongst their neighbors, the details and evidence of which were chronicled throughout various locations in Egypt.
This tomb here in Aswan is one of the greatest examples of economics in the early world. We're here at the tomb of Hakuf. Hakuf was a governor at Elephantine during the Old Kingdom. In fact, he served under Pepi II, who was the last ruler of the 6th dynasty. It's really important to understand or come to this tomb because there's certain things here that really get into how the people saw economics and trade and commerce with other African nations. The inscriptions of this tomb detail the accounts of the countless trade expeditions Hakuf had to the kingdom of Yam. One of the things he was responsible for was mapping out various trade routes. Economics really played a role in what they were doing to develop civilization. But they were trading goods from the interior of the continent and out into other parts of the world because the Delta area became the crossroads or became the trade routes into and out of Africa, into Asia, into Europe. One of the things he noticed was that throughout the time, certain other groups started to come in and settle in from the west into the Nile Valley. This upset the trade flow of goods from south to north or east to west, if you will. And what happened was he feared for his life. So one of the things that he requested was an escort, or the king of Yam, or the ruler of Yam at that time, providing an escort for him to go back to Kemet or into Egypt. This is very important because it shows two things. One, it shows the relationship between the kingdoms of the Nile. It shows that they had a friendly relationship, a trade, commerce, economic relationship. And it also shows that there were other kingdoms, other peoples migrating into the Nile, which we know eventually will upset the balance and flow into the Nile Valley. This constant flux of people into the Nile didn't stop there. It continued throughout history.
In order to have a greater understanding of trade expeditions carried out by ancient Egypt, we traveled to the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago to speak with Dr. Bruce Williams.
In the late Old Kingdom, and then several other periods in the history of Egypt, the Egyptians sent large expeditions to the Red Sea and sailed up the Red Sea to get the same products that they would get from Yemen, pretty much. And that was an alternative, so they could go around some of these rising powers on the Nile Valley. And this back and forth between Nile route or Western Desert route and the Red Sea is, let's say, a theme that recurs again and again in the more ancient history.
We have very important texts about the relation between Egypt and the south of Nubia. How the Egyptian will go to bring the products for the temples, for the wealth of the temples, and gold from Nubia. Then the Egyptians building the pyramid actually made the Egyptian to control all the sources from outside. The only thing that the Egyptian will export and give outside, in my opinion, was only gold.
Before money existed, the universal aspect of currency centered on trade, or what's more commonly referred to as the barter system. The demand placed on goods or services determined its value. This same principle of give and take is demonstrated in the current exchange or stock markets around the world today.
So if you go back to, say, ancient Egypt, before money as we know it today existed, how did you know the rich person from the poor person? Well, you knew that based on the resources they had at their disposal. You knew that based on their wealth, and wealth was seen as a more universal concept than just how much money I have in my pocket. So, for example, let's say that I am sitting here and I have this pineapple, and I really don't need a pineapple. I don't want this pineapple. I don't even like pineapple. But I know the pineapple has value because I know that there's somebody out there that wants a pineapple. But instead of wanting a pineapple, I actually want bananas. So what might I do? Well, I might go and let's say I go into the marketplace and I find out that 2 bananas is worth 1 pineapple. Well, I'm going to have to find somebody who has bananas and say, hey, I'll give you this pineapple in exchange for your 2 bananas. And what's going to happen is that the number of bananas necessary to get 1 pineapple is going to fluctuate and change based on the supply and demand of bananas and pineapples. So if pineapple suddenly became really popular and very rare, then it might take 20 bananas to get 1 pineapple. Or bananas suddenly were in oversupply, then it might require a lot of bananas to buy 1 pineapple because people will say, oh, bananas are not a big deal. Everybody has one. So ultimately, supply and demand are what drives any economic system.
When we think of economics, we have to think of food. We have to think of clothing. We have to think of shelter. We have to think of safety. So how do we handle this? Well, you must have some means of exchanging goods with other people and services with other people so that you can get the goods and services that they have and you can get the goods and service you have so that you can have a broader perspective in terms of how you supply and provide for your group.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Can everybody please take a second and give this brother a digital round of applause for the first 20 minutes of that film. It's called HAPI, H-A-P-I. And you can see quality cinematography, excellent work. I don't know about you all, but I was really learning a lot by watching this. He was gracious enough to allow us to do a 20-minute sneak peek of the film for free. Now, what I would like to ask you to do is, if you enjoyed what you saw, I hope you'll support this brother's screening. It is going to happen on the 21st of this month. And we've got some tickets that you can get at blackmovienight.net. If you go to blackmovienight.net, you can actually get a pass and click that link. It's down there right below the link you hit to come to this sneak peek. And so I got some questions, man. Okay, so first thing I want to mention, first of all, great job, by the way. I'm sure you hear that a lot. I'm going to say it again. Great job. The thing I'd like to ask you, Taki, is, well, first off, let me just mention the thing that kind of blew my mind. When the guy said that the pyramid had 2.3 million stones, and each stone was 2.5 tons, 5,000 pounds. Each stone's 5,000 pounds, and they had 2.3 million of them. I mean, that's some insane level of organization and coordination. I mean, that's extraordinary. They can't even do that now. They couldn't do a project like that now. But can you talk about that a little bit in terms of what you learned during that experience?
Well, going back to one of the other previous, first thing I just want to say, the round of applause goes to the team. There's a lot of people that helped put this together, even from the historical piece, the Professor Smalls, the Dr. Linda Jeffries, the Infudishis, who people will see later on in the film. People like that, they were really instrumental in just setting the foundation for the dialogue. People like yourself, so, Tutti Films, everyone around me, that's just really, it was a group effort. And that group effort, which brings me to the second part of your question in terms of Dr. Jeffries talked about the 3 C's, communal, cooperative, and collective development in terms of civilization. The people along the Nile came together collectively to do this. The Nile is also the foundation for people call societies of secrets. There's a reason why we don't know why certain things are done or how they were done, because they were basically, you had to be initiated in certain rites, certain guilds, certain what people call Freemasonry started along the Nile. So when we talk about just developing the system in terms of how they did it is one thing, but the management that went around it is something totally different. We know it was an estimated 10,000 people that worked on this project. And by and large, the people that lived there during this period of flooding had the whole town associated in close proximity to, let's say, Giza, this project Giza, because all the projects had similar working guilds. And then this village of workmen or workers, they had separate guilds. You had the masons, you had your crafters, you had your, just your laborers. You had different people. So they had the fishery, they had the slaughterhouses, they had all these different components that went there to help feed the people that were there. So people talk about slavery and other things as being a part of it. And that's what Dr. Zahi Howes was saying. We found the tombs of the workmen that were here building the pyramids. And you can see just by the anthropology, their backs, a lot of times it was stress in terms of pushing the stones. They were buried alongside the royalty. He said they were slaves, they would never have been buried there in close proximity to the pyramids. You find similar locations in Egypt. One is down in several miles, hundreds of miles south in Luxor, what they call the City of Truth, where you had the village of the workmen that were responsible for the Valley of the Kings. And this is a very interesting place because this is actually where you find your first labor strike in history. The people actually went on a labor strike because they felt they weren't getting paid enough. And we want to make it clear that payment at that time wasn't in the form of money. Payment at that time came in the form of grain. It came in the form of fish. It came in the form of just agriculture. It came in the form of just, that was the essential wealth, gold. These are things that they used to form as payment. One of the most highly sought out commodities in ancient Egypt was linen, because linen had so many different components to it in terms of what it was used for. You have your linen that was used for mummification, when someone made their transition. They used it for wrapping the dead and wrapping the body, but also just everyday dress attire. Linen was used for just so many different functionalities. And what made it even more so interesting is because the marketplaces where you get the commodities exchange, and people just trading, buying on a trading floor, comes from that because their marketplaces was that they were trading commodities. And one of the most sought after commodities was linen. And in this case, the women had a kind of a monopoly on the marketplace because the woman was the one who wove the linen. So the women in ancient Egypt, the African women along the Nile controlled the marketplace there. So it's a very extraordinary history.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, you know, man, I think one thing that also stuck out to me when I was watching the film was, I can't remember if it was Professor Jeffries or Professor Small who said this, but he mentioned economics, politics, and culture. Was it Professor Jeffries who said that?
Jeffries.
Yeah, yeah. And he talked about, you know, economics, politics, and culture being important for systems analysis. You know, when you talk about developing systems, and I was lacing that together, like lacing his intelligence with, you know, with what I thought about in terms of, you know, an economic power play for Black people. And somebody said, well, what do you think are some of the most important skills for young people to learn? I said, if you learn systems, then you're going to be economically strong, because a system can always make more money than you can as a laborer, right? So when I was thinking about systems, I was thinking about, you know, delegation, you know, structure and organization where every individual in the organization is on a specific code of conduct. You know, that's what corporations are. Corporations are one of many thousands of systems that allow the level of income earning that is just unbelievable. You know, that's how you get Amazon saying, oh, we made $20 billion this quarter, that kind of thing. And, you know, and so I thought about each of those three words, right? And I think that as a community, one area we could start in terms of analyzing who we are and where we are is look at those three words. You know, how astute, how smart are we as a community when it comes to our economics? Well, you know, if people are able to say that a dollar only stays in the Black community for a few hours or whatever the number is, you know, then maybe our economics could get stronger. So maybe we need to train our babies on economics from birth, right? And then you go to politics. How politically intelligent are we? Are we getting max value in our politics? You know, when we vote for a politician, are we ensuring that we get what we need, or are we not, right? What are our politics in our community in terms of us feeling empowered after we participate? There's work to be done there. And then also culture. You know, what is your culture? A lot of people overlook this, but economics is heavily based on culture, which is a manifestation of the psychology of the individuals that are in that culture, right? So, you know, if you have a family where everybody becomes an entrepreneur, then you're probably going to become one too. You're going to have an oversupply of entrepreneurs. If everybody in the family is thinking about wealth acquisition, like if everybody wants to own property, then you're going to have a bunch of property owners in your family. But if you have a family where everybody's twerking, then you're going to have a bunch of really good twerkers. If everybody's playing football or basketball, you know, singing and dancing, you know, or a bunch of rappers, you're going to have a lot of that. So you got to ask yourself, what is your culture? What is the culture in your family? Because the culture will play a direct part in what you manifest, you know, because culture, I've noticed with culture, it tends to create carrots and sticks where we get rewarded or punished for either going along with certain behavior or deviating from that behavior. You know, like, so for example, that's where you get these kids, you know, these kids that go to school and make straight A's and their friends are saying, you know, you're acting white, you know, you sound white, you know, or the kid is a basketball star and the whole family's cheering for him because he scored 25 points in the basketball game, right? So you got to ask yourself, what are you cheering for? What are you encouraging? And what are you discouraging? You know, when I go tell my family, I say, hey, I got the job, and I put it on Facebook, I get 3,000 likes in a couple hours, right? But if I say, hey, I started a business, it's crickets. Because people think I'm getting out of my lane. I'm stepping out of my, you know, I'm stepping out of my place by doing that. Like, what are you doing? That's not possible. Black people don't start businesses. That's not what you do. That's not your culture. That's not your culture, right? But getting a job is your culture. So I think that to me was very powerful too. Economics, politics, and culture. I think if you start right there, you can learn a lot. What say you, Taki?
I tell you, just going back to Dr. Leonard Jeffries and his systems analysis. Systems analysis and how he explains it is on a triangle, essentially the side of a pyramid. Economics and politics are complementary aspects of each other. At the top of that triangle is culture. Culture manages both economics and your politics. That right there, like you said, is the answer. And this is why, you know, going back to Honorable Elijah Muhammad, talking about, well, can go further back than before that, but just people have the knowledge of self is key. And you talk just in terms of the development of where we are today the white culture developed who they are. That culture, the deep values that they had, the pervasive culture, was that managed their system of slavery, creating the joint stock companies that were there to manage these, their new economic foundation. But the culture piece, the deep values that a person has, the deep values that a group of individuals have, will determine how they spend their money and who they spend their money with. Will determine how they raise their kids, what they teach their kids. Will determine who they love and who they hate. The cultural imperative is the most important aspect in our lives. And this is why a film like HAPI is so important, because it goes directly to the culture, and it ties in the culture of who we are with both our economics and our politics.
Well, everybody, I'll tell you, I don't know about y'all, but I really enjoyed what I saw. I felt smarter watching this film, and it just feels good. I mean, tell me, does it not feel good to just see how great we are? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I get inspired when I see that kind of thing. It just really, it made me say, okay, we got to keep stepping our game up. Like the ancestors laid out a blueprint of power, and I think it's very important for us to pay attention to that. Then let's see, Celeste is asking, what does his shirt say? Well, this says Blag Enough. Blag Enough is actually a social media platform that we created. We have a trademark on this word, and it's basically a lot like Facebook, except it's Black owned, and you can actually join blagenough.com. I'll try to hold it up so it's not crooked. Feel free to go to blagenough.com. There are a lot of people on there who are just like you. Freedom of speech, it's in full effect, so feel free to try it out. So let me, is it okay if I throw in a few questions from the audience, Taki? Is that all right?
Sure.
All right. Let's see, where can we see this movie? There is a screening of the film that's going to happen on the 21st of November. The URL I'm putting in here is blackmovienight.net. If somebody can type it in, blackmovienight.net, go there and you can actually get the link to go to the screening on the 21st. And also hapifilm.com, HAPI, hapifilm.com. They have a lot of other information, resources, information about the cast, things like that. So blackmovienight.net is where you can actually get the link to see this film, and I hope you'll be a part of this. Let's see, Carl Brown says, how did the Egyptians use spirituality in their economics to be successful, and how can we use our spirituality to make our economics successful? What do you think, Taki?
Wow, I like that. Thank you, Carl, for asking that question.
Yeah.
We were fortunate in making this film to be able to tie economics to everything that we do. And there's a segment in the film that talks about spiritual economics. And you look at everything, again, in life is give and take, it's an exchange. The principle of Ma'at that we talk about in ancient Kemet that deals with reciprocity, truth, justice, righteousness, deals with the concept of you're doing good, good is returned to you. You're giving something, something is returned to you. The greeting in Egypt in terms of Hotep, I come to bring satisfaction, you're offering something. During your segment, we showed we showed artifact, it was a table, it's an offering table. That's actually a Hotep. And we wanted to show wealth, and it was really difficult to show wealth from where we were in terms of just cinematographically. But the Hotep itself is an offering table. When you greet someone, you're giving them something. It's not just an empty gesture, but in return, you're getting something back. So the point in terms of spirituality and how that's connected, our prayers, our supplications, our offerings we make to the divine, we make these offerings because in return, we're getting something back. When you go to ancient Kemet, you look on the walls, what you'll see, you'll see, the Nasut Biti or the Pharaoh making an offering to a principle or to a divine principle, and in return, something's being given back. So that process of reciprocity or ma'at that we practice deals directly with spiritual economics.
Well, and I think spirituality can play a big part in Black economics in America in a lot of ways, even if you don't go to church. I see economics as very spiritual. Just one example is, I know it took a whole lot of faith for me to become a business owner. I had to become real spiritual, like just have faith that if I continue to remain consistent and stick to certain principles, I would eventually find success, right? So, we talk about faith, but sometimes I wonder how much faith do we have in ourselves? If you're afraid to try new things and to expand your comfort zone, then, do you really have faith? or better yet, maybe you have so much faith in something that's external that you have no faith in that which is internal, right? And some people believe that the concept of God itself is an internal thing, that you are a God, and I believe that. If you look at it in a certain way, I think as a man, for example, I know my masculine energy gives me a very powerful ability to manifest and create things out of nothing, right? That makes me a God. If I go to that sixth dimension of manifestation, I become a God, right? And we've all got that in us. And then also, I think if you look at the Black woman, I mean, that is a goddess, right? She creates life. She's the mother of the earth, the original woman, all these things, right? So maybe that's one spiritual interpretation. Maybe it's my spiritual interpretation, but it may be different from yours. But I think it's okay to say that it's really hard to achieve on a high level economically if you don't have something spiritual that guides you. Because sometimes the things you see and feel around you can deceive you. They can make you think that there's no hope, but you got to find the hope somewhere, and you find that in the spirit world.
Yes.
All right. So let's see here. Okay, so check this out. The next question says, I am a 7th grader. Look at that. And I want to know, watching with my grandmother, and I wanted to know if this has anything to do with the Silk Road. How would you connect the film to the Silk Road? And that, by the way, I think it's great that the 7th graders just asked that question.
It's interesting. So we have parallels. And speaking of the Silk Road that existed, and one of them, well, I'm just going to use this one example, was the Trans-Saharan Trade Network that existed across North Africa that spread into Europe and Western Asia. And you had, I'm just going to throw a number out there, roughly trillions of dollars of goods that was traded through there. And one of the highest commodities through that area was salt. And we talked about this last night on our HAPI Talks segment with Robin Walker. He's a historian from the UK. And we talked about the word for salt being salary being derivative from the word from salt, just how powerful salt was in terms of its value, and how salt was used obviously for preservation of food and so forth and so on. So gold and other commodities was used basically across this breadth of North Africa, essentially to what the Silk Road was. We also know that now China's in the process of developing a new Silk Road that they're trying to implement to gain control of just various trade routes around the world, to have a kind of corner the market in a sense. And that's what a lot of the wars that we speak about in HAPI were about. One of the things about the relationships with the Kingdom of the Nile, the Middle Nile region, or the point between Nubia and Egypt, was the economic trade route for which it was always sought after. This is why a lot of your battles were fought there. The Delta region in Egypt was very sought after because it controlled the trade routes in and out of the continent. They had great battles in places like Syria, Kadesh, things like that, because those trade routes, again, were important to those going up into Europe and into Asia as well. So the trade routes is always a center of contention around the world, and we see that play out. We see it played out in the ancient world. We see it played out today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, a lot of, I can't think of too many times that human beings have really done crazy things to each other that didn't involve fighting over, something related to wealth or some scarce resource, right? Like I think like oil is something that, we've been in wars for decades now over oil. And I think it's important for people to know that, because, if you're not informed, then they'll fool you into believing that it's over something like democracy or whatever. That's just a bunch of BS they feed you to get you to send your child over to get shot up in the jungle, but they fighting over oil wells or whatever it is. It's usually over resources. If you want to understand, a lot of politics, just follow the money. Okay, so the next question is, will DVD copies of this film be available for purchase? I think they already are, right?
Yes. And I just wanted to let people know, for those who may not want to wait to watch it, they can go to the website, hapifilm.com. There's a digital copy through Vimeo, and the DVD is also available. DVD has to be mailed to you, of course, but those are options. We encourage people to watch it with the family collectively, because one of the things, and I'm glad that question was asked, is bringing me something I wanted to talk about. The difference between the DVD and the Vimeo digital copy versus the screening is the panel discussion that follows. There's a panel discussion that immediately follows the film, and it's only for ticket holders. So the panel discussion, you know, it always varies. We've had like 4 or 5 screenings, but about 5 screenings so far, and it's never the same people. You know, usually, you know, obviously Dr. Jeffries, Professor Smalls, Dr. Jacqueline Badalora, Dr. Julianne Malveaux. You never know who you're going to see. We use about 5 or 6 people from the film in the panel, and we have it moderated. So the panel discussion is really like the best piece, and you get that. So it's like maybe all together with the 2-hour movie, you know, you're looking at maybe like, you know, 3 or 4 hours that you'll be there, because it's just an extraordinary evening. So people, you know, they can get it, they can watch it now, but you're really going to want to have exclusive access to the panel discussion, because we do not post it. We don't put it on social media. It's one thing, we don't even record it. It's just a conversation that we're having about various different topics. And it doesn't be necessarily about the film, but the conversation goes. And you have these powerful minds in this panel. It's a panel of geniuses.
Okay. Fanny wants to know, what company made that shirt you're wearing?
Nubia Apparel. I guess we'll put it in the chat. But if people want the shirt, they can go to happyfilm.com, and we have this and various other shirts similar to this with the glyph or the principle HAPI and the role of economics in the development of civilization. That was our tagline for the longest. And we use other ones like economic empowerment through economic literacy, and also from crops to stocks. Let's talk about just the evolution of currency from the crops that they were dealing with in the agrarian society of ancient Egypt to the stocks that we deal with today. So when we think of HAPI, we think of from crops to stocks.
All right. And the last question we can cover for tonight. When Ray asked, when I buy my ticket but have plans that evening, will I still be able to see the movie? I don't think so, right?
You know, I would suggest he just go ahead and get the digital copy or get the DVD. That kind of just, he doesn't have to worry about it. But we've made exceptions in the past, you know, special circumstances. But, you know, if you get the ticket for that night, please, by all means, try to come out. There is a time, and let me clarify something. It's from 7, we start at 7 o'clock run time. I also want to kind of explain this to people as well, those who are listening right now, who will hear this. The film will be streamed through Vimeo. For those who have ticket holders, they will be sent a link, an exclusive link that they'll be able to access the film. It won't, you know, as they saw it here, kind of lagged a little bit. It'll be straight, direct from the source to their homes. I encourage people who have smart TVs, watch it on a big screen. If you have the ability to plug your phone into your television, things like that, your computer, you're going to want to see it on a big screen. You're not going to want to see it on like your phone or anything like that, because it's just that grand. But there is a window, and I think the window may be like 24 hours or so, but that they'll be able to watch it if they missed it at 7 p.m.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So yeah, he can go back and see it, you know, and we could actually put that in the chat as well, just how long the window will be available for them to access it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to ask too. So given that the film is so well received and it was so well done, what's the next project for you after this one, or have you not even thought about it yet?
No, I have. I just don't know if I want to tell. But yeah, there's some things, you know, we got to kind of keep it on the down low right now. I don't want to use that term, but keep it on the hush hush right now, and you know, and just until we're ready to kind of come out with it. But I'll definitely be looking, you know, for you to be a part of it again, and some others. So we're definitely looking at doing some things, because now we got to do something different on a whole nother level. So yeah, we're definitely already in the works with it.
All right. Well, anybody who wants to join the screening and the panel discussion on the 21st, we do have tickets at blackmovienight.net. Thank you, Felicia, for sharing that link in the thread. I appreciate that. So go to blackmovienight.net and you can attend the screening and the panel discussion, and I will be there. I'll be on the panel, right? I am on the panel, correct?
Yeah,
I forget my schedule, but I'm like, some of my brain is saying, boy, yeah, you're on the panel, boy, so don't forget. Am I really? You know, yeah, I'm a weirdo like that, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I have a lot of respect for this project, and I just really hope everybody will support this. And also, if you could, give me a verbal confirmation. Give me a yes in the chat. If you'll go to grab the link on drboystv.com and share this link on your social media. Just give me a yes, because for filmmakers, distribution is extremely important. distribution. You know, if you want to look at how, you know, Hollywood makes money, if you look at how the Jews invented Hollywood, that's the name of the book. There's a book out there called this. It comes down to three pieces: production, distribution, and monetization, right? So that means that you got to find somebody that can make the project, which this brother did that, and his team did that. They made this project. And then you need distribution. How do you get this in front of as many people as possible, right? Distribution is huge. You know, Tyler Perry had a big distribution deal with Lionsgate. He needed Lionsgate because he couldn't distribute his films on his own, at least not initially, right? Our distribution is you. You are our distribution channel, right? Really, you know, so when everybody in here is active, like I don't want any passive participants. Like, we can't be passive. Everybody is a Black leader here. Everybody is part of the process. So if you could just do that a little bit, just grab that link on drboystv.com, just pop it on your social media and say something positive about this movie, and be honest. Like, don't be out here lying. Like, if this is some garbage, I wouldn't be out here vouching for no garbage. Now, y'all know this, right? So trust is an important part of any ecosystem, right? So given that you trust that this is not garbage because of what you've seen, give it an endorsement, share the link on your social media, and then that becomes part of the distribution process. Your friends see it, they all want to come in, etc. And then the last piece is monetization. And that's where things like this screening and panel are important. So you can get your ticket to the screening at blackmovienight.net. Because what happens is that if you run that process properly, if you can monetize at the end of the tunnel, then guess what? The filmmaker puts out their money, and their money's like a boomerang. The money comes back, and it comes back with friends. You put out 100,000, you come back with 150 or 200,000. So you got your initial capital and a profit, which allows you to make a bigger film. When Tariq Nasheed talks about Hidden Colors, he says, my first project was maybe 40, 50,000. He said, but it did so well, I was able to put double or triple that in my second project. And then by the third one, he was able to triple that. So that's how you build. That's what you call flipping, right? That's how you grow a gigantic industry, right? So we need to have that fertile economic soil where we can allow these directors, support them in their flipping process, so we develop an entire ecosystem. So no passive participants. Everybody's on the basketball court. Even if you ain't the one shooting the jumper, you can at least box out, you can grab a rebound, you can play some defense, you can do something. So everybody, please participate. Give me a yes in the chat if you get what I just said, and I hope you understand that this is a great economic lesson that we just have right here. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, brother. Did you have anything else to say?
I just want to say, you know, we want to get people to actively support the HAPI movement, in that, you know, we're very active on all our platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But with that also, there's a newsletter that we produce monthly. And the newsletter has 5 components to it. We feature a Black innovator in economics, an article on financial literacy, an article on health, the HAPI update. And we also, just in the spirit of corporate economics, feature a Black business every month. The newsletter is free. Go to happyfilm.com to be a part of it. Sign up for the newsletter, and it's issued every month, and just be a part of the movement.
All right, happyfilm.com. There you go. That's where the newsletter is. Okay, everybody. Well, please give a digital thank you to our guest, Taki Grant. Taki is the director of the new film HAPI, H-A-P-I. And it's a great film, as you all saw the sneak peek. But again, that was 10% of the movie. So imagine what the other 90% must be like. So God bless everybody. Thank you guys for hanging out. And I'm going to go find Alicia. We were at an event in Atlanta. I left the event because I really wanted to be here and hang out with you all. But now I'm going to go spend some time with the pretty Black woman that I get to have by my side. So take care, everybody. I'll see you soon. Have a good night. And thanks a lot, brother. Take care of yourself now. All right, my man.